Hey guys, welcome to Stock Talk with Mike. Today I want to talk about one of my top holdings in my portfolio, and that's Square. They recently reported Q1 earnings. I want to break down some of the commentary from that earnings report and also talk about something that you're really going to watch moving forward if you're a Square investor that might create additional buying opportunities or might be misinterpreted by investors. So let's get right into it. All right, so let's play some clips from their Q1 earnings report.
Square Financial Services, our newly opened bank, will eventually allow us to expand access to banking services to many more small businesses. We also made government disbursements available to individuals through Cash App, enabling access to these funds up to two days early. We saw customers spending across the platform on critical needs such as rent, car payments, food, and utility bills.
All right, so that's actually a huge part of Square's projected future growth here is they recently received their banking charter, and that's going to be able to allow them to expand on their banking services are already providing to customers and to their seller agents. So that's going to be really interesting to watch that unfold and see what kind of optionality and additional revenue streams it could create for Square. Square could be potentially a company that people go to rather than a bank for their daily banking needs, right? If they can get the money sitting in Square, that's gonna be a game changer for Square. So very interesting to see how that unfolds as they become a more inclusive ecosystem. And even things like receiving your any government disbursements a couple days early just makes them that much more sticky. People are going to utilize Square in their Cash App to take advantage of some of these services.
This quarter, a new feature in our seller ecosystem that more efficiently connects sellers with their buyers through text or email. Square Messages is accessible from sellers' online Square dashboard and consolidates communications with buyers from Square Feedback, Square Receipts, and Square Appointments in one place. Now, buyers can simply text or email to sellers regarding their latest purchases or upcoming appointments, and sellers can respond while keeping their attention on the business. Consumers and sellers have both expressed interest in being able to message each other directly, and we believe this will help deepen the relationship and ultimately grow sales.
Again, this is just more optionality for their sellers ecosystem, the ability to incorporate automated and direct messaging for sellers to buyers, for appointments and receipts and things like that. Again, it's just adding value for these seller agents that'll make it hard for them to go to any other company than Square as their services just become that much more sticky. So this is the kind of thing that Square continues to do. They continue to innovate and expand upon their offerings for sellers, and that's why they're gaining market share.
Our omnichannel efforts have enabled us to attract and retain larger sellers too. Larger sellers come to Square for the breadth of our ecosystem, including our vertical point-of-sale products. Sellers who use Square for Restaurants or Square for Retail have adopted more than 3 of our products on average and generated greater than 5x the gross profit compared to the average seller in the first quarter.
All right, so basically they're attracting a lot of larger customers now too. They've been known for really focusing on small business, right? With their chip readers, they allow small businesses to be able to accept credit cards and debit cards. But really with these integrated ecosystems, they're creating value for larger customers here as well. And they're actually seeing increased gross profits in those customers that are adopting 3 or more of their products.
We launched Bitcoin peer-to-peer functionality. Customers can now send Bitcoin to friends and family for free within the app, which has attracted new customers to Bitcoin. This gives even more opportunities to build new network effects across the entire Cash ecosystem.
Well, the ability for customers or users of the Cash App to be able to send Bitcoin for free to others, that's really interesting concept here. And again, it's just another product that will allow, that might get people on board with using Square in their ecosystem. And they might end up using other services that they didn't originally join or download the Square app, the Cash App for over time, right? They might they might come to Square in the Cash App to be able to send someone Bitcoin, but oh, hey, I can buy stocks on the Cash App. I can do these other things on Cash App. So that's how they create this sticky ecosystem. And they have all these different tentacles out there grabbing customers. And it's working. Next, I'm going to play a little clip from the Q&A at the end of the conference call. It was an analyst asking about their recent acquisition of Tidal.
Thank you. Good evening. Nice acceleration. Jack, I'm hoping we could dig a little bit more into Square's investment rationale for acquiring Tidal. How should investors think about, I guess, synergy realization with the brand? And how do you envision what the early integration efforts might look like with Square's existing ecosystems? Thank you.
Yeah, great question, and I know a bunch of you out there had questions around this. We're super excited about this work because we get to broaden how we build our tools for an entirely new set of audience, and that set is artists and musicians. If you look at the space, obviously there's a ton of competition in streaming, but there's not a really great effort around artist tools. And what the thesis we had going into this deal was that we want to make sure that that everything that we learn from helping a seller with very simple tools in order to participate in the economy, we can bring to an artist, because we saw a ton of parallels between what a new emerging artist has to go through, the long tail of artists, and what a small business has to go through. They're very similar. And we're going to start with the most critical needs, and we have a good 100-day roadmap, and you all should be seeing some updates within those 100 days. We're going to focus on those simple, critical artist tools in a way that we know how, and really provide a platform for artists to turn to first when they want to release their work. And we are focused on a more emergent, we are focused on a more long tail, because that is the pattern and the flow that has worked for us with the seller base. But as you see in our business, we have handled some of the largest sellers in the world, and we expect to be able to provide the same sort of tools and experiences for the largest artists in the world as well. And fortunately, we have some of the largest artists in the world within this deal and also on our board, who have been through the entire industry, understands what an artist needs, understand what the new emergent artist needs, and how to really build a service that they love and really is giving back to them and to their career. So that was the thesis behind the deal. We're going to move super fast, and we're really excited about doing the work. And I imagine with some of the releases that we will be putting out over the next year that you will see the same parallels that we see.
Yeah, this is interesting. I've heard a number of podcasts and other analysts wondering what synergies Tidal would have with Square and how exactly that would fit in. But what Jack Dorsey is laying out is that a lot of the needs here of the artists are very similar to what the sellers of small businesses and large businesses is. So that'd be very interesting to see what kind of suite of products they develop here for artists over the next 100 days, as Jack mentioned. And as he said, they're going to move quickly on this. And start with a focused approach and kind of broaden out those tools like they have for business. And it'll be interesting to see if this becomes a profitable arm of the business, as Cash App has, as their small business ecosystems has as well. So interesting. And he mentioned their music talent that's on their board. Actually, Jay-Z recently joined Square's board of directors. So I mentioned I wanted to talk about what to watch for Square moving forward. And I think one real challenge with their balance sheet, at least their top line results with any earnings or any headlines you see from their earnings reports, is the huge skew from Bitcoin and people drastically overestimating the effect that Bitcoin has on their business. So they have been a benefactor, absolutely, of that hype in Bitcoin, and is showing on their top line results. and you see it trading a little bit with Bitcoin as well. But I think people are drastically overestimating what the price action of Bitcoin means for Square's success. It's a relatively small part of their business from a profit margin perspective, and people have to keep that in line. And even Square themselves have said, like, please focus on the gross profit because the revenue number is extremely skewed. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So on the Q1 earnings report, Square said that total net revenue was 5.06 billion in the first quarter of 2021, and that was up 266% year over year, quarter over quarter. And like that just seems like a massive number. But the issue is they're not trying to create any kind of smoke and mirrors here, but they're actually required by the SEC to report all Bitcoin transactions as revenue. So if someone goes on the Cash App and buys $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, that shows up on their revenue line as $10,000. So that would be like a real estate agent reporting the revenue of the total price of the home, not what they take out of the transaction. So that's very, very misleading. That it's like a stock brokerage recording revenue of every all inflows of funds versus just reporting commissions sort of thing. So it's very, very misleading. So yeah, if we see a huge not really a decline in price action with Bitcoin, but in volume, right? Because that's really what's going to make the difference. It doesn't really matter if it trades at $40,000 Bitcoin or 20,000. It's really about the volume because people just buy more Bitcoin, right? So if volume kind of dries up, you could see that revenue number decline. But from their profit or their gross margin perspective, it doesn't really contribute a lot to the bottom line. It's just part of their ecosystem that gets people in the door using Square for a large, broad number of services, including buying stocks or small business uses as well. And yeah, I think people have to pay attention to that, because if we see a big decline, if Bitcoin goes out of favor and people are not buying in the volume, and there's not that kind of volume in Bitcoin, you're going to see that revenue number dry up. And this number is so inflated that it makes it really hard to compare year over year Square's success. Yeah, and it's benefited them on the other side as well. Yeah, people see these massive revenue growth numbers, and you really can't pay much attention to that with Square. So I wish they could report that differently, but that's the way it is. So I think for Square, you really want to focus on the gross profit side of things. So that's going to give you a more true story. That's what they have said as well. And I think that just makes actually a lot of sense. So excluding Bitcoin, total net revenue in the first quarter was 1.55 billion. So way less than the 5.06 billion, right? So that's more kind of what their revenue number is looking like. So they're even taking that added step of communicating in their shareholder letter what the amount is without Bitcoin, realizing that it's inflating their revenues drastically. And so their real true revenue growth is really 44% revenue growth year over year. Nothing to sneeze at, great growth. But yeah, if people see a deceleration at 266%, people are going to look at that top line result, not look at the underlying business, what's actually going on, and be like, oh, Square isn't executing. And I totally could see that, right? Where there's this big sell-off in Square, overreaction with people quick to pull the trigger because they see a top line result of revenues declining, while you might have gross profits increasing because it's really just about volume of Bitcoin transactions, right? So yeah, it's incredibly misleading. Their gross profit was 964 million in the first quarter of 2021, and that was up 79% year over year. So really heading in the right direction from a gross profit perspective. And yeah, just looking here, that that definitely is up from Q4 of 2020 as well, where it was 804 million. So they're definitely headed in the right direction. And this is the number you're going to want to pay attention to. And if you're seeing this number continue to increase, earnings per share increase, but you're seeing that if you see that revenue number decline, dive a little deeper and see what happened as far as Bitcoin. You can go onto their website, Investor Relations, and every quarterly report they put out an investor letter, or you can look at their SEC filing, and it's going to have a breakdown of Bitcoin revenue, and you can look at that side of things. The other side of it is Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a minuscule amount of they have $4 billion in cash, right? And the amount of Bitcoin they have is nowhere near that. So it really doesn't move the needle as far as affecting the business. If Bitcoin goes down to 20,000, as far as Bitcoin in the balance sheet, it's not going to affect Square business in any way. And in my view, if you see that revenue number decline and it's a result of any kind of decrease in volume of Bitcoin transactions, because maybe Bitcoin falls out of favor or something like that, but you're seeing increased revenues in other areas of their business, that could be a real buying opportunity, because Bitcoin is a relatively small contributor to the bottom line as far gross profits, as far as contributing to this 964 million in gross profits. It's almost nothing. So their seller ecosystem accounts for 468 million of that gross profit. And then you have the Cash App total through all its services, 495 million. So the Bitcoin portion contribution to the gross profits minuscule. So it's really not really a huge needle mover at this time. Pretty low margin business. So yeah, definitely something to watch with Square moving forward in future earnings reports. So far, it's been to their benefit, because Square, since they've adopted Bitcoin, Bitcoin has been extremely hyped, right? It's been in the news. Everyone's investing in Bitcoin, but who knows what the next several years have in store. So it's something to watch kind of closely. But anyways, that's about all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching, and happy investing.